UX Podcast Episode 254.
I'm James Roy Lawson, and this is UX Podcast, balancing business, technology, people and society every other Friday for almost 10 years and reaching out to listeners in 197 countries and territories from Poland to Jordan.
From time to time, we will bring you a repeat show. This is an episode from our extensive back catalog, resurfacing some of the ideas and thoughts from the past that we believe are still relevant and well worth revisiting.
This time we're joined again by Abby Covert and Andrew Hinton. They're both authors and information architecture gurus.
And we recorded this conversation way back in 2015 at UXLX, where both Abby and Andrew had held talks and workshops.
Yeah, we were sat in room 4, as it's known, at UXLX, when Abby and Andrew just spontaneously turned up at the door. We sat them down, mic'd them up, and press record, and we captured a conversation with a great number of interesting and thought-provoking points.
We're joined by Abby Covert and Andrew Hinton, just popping in to have a chat with us.
The door was open.
Hey guys.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Excellent.
Now, Andrew, you've actually had it quite easy. You've only done a workshop.
I did a workshop.
Designing from context.
Yeah. I mean,
Context.
I was seriously jet lagged, but I did a workshop the first morning, and then I've just been sort of walking around.
Yeah. Whereas Abby, you've had to work a little bit more for your books during this trip.
Yeah, I did a workshop the first day, and then yesterday I got to give a talk. That was fun.
So how to make sense of any mess was your workshop, and then
Which also happens to be the name of the book that we both own now.
we do both own the book now. Yeah.
I hear there's a feud about which one is signed.
Mine is
so
signed.
I will sign the other one.
Yeah,
that's
what I was.
If you'd like.
Yeah.
Mine is signed. No. That's not on. Mine's signed, Pers is not. That's the way we know the difference. So information architecture for everybody was your talk yesterday.
Yep.
So, which was fun despite the heat, the soaring heat in the main hall.
Oh, it
yesterday.
was. If you thought it was bad in the audience, you should have
Yeah,
been on
so-
that stage.
Yeah. And what was the very first thing you said in your talk yesterday? Wasn't it because our world is a mess?
Our world is a mess.
And
yeah.
you're
What you started
obsessed
with.
with messes. Is
I
what
am obsessed with
yeah,
messes.
yeah.
I mean, you guys, I can't give my mother technical support anymore for her Apple devices. I used to be able to do that.
Oh,
Like, are you guys still capable of doing that for other people? Like,
I find it getting it's tougher and tougher getting through a tech support session with my mum without really hitting the wall and losing it, because I do it internationally, because my mum
Yeah.
doesn't live in Sweden, she lives in the UK, so it's all via telephone, but from a usability point of view, from a user testing point of view, sometimes it's fascinating as when I'm describing something, it's press the menu icon or menu button down at the bottom right, and we've both got Android phones, so you'd think it'd be pretty straightforward, but she hasn't got quite the same flavour.
yeah.
So she actually presses things what she thinks is a menu, and then says to me, "Yes, I've pressed it." So I go, "Great. Now you should be able to see this, this, and this." No.
Exactly.
I told you it wasn't there. I told you it
Exactly.
wasn't working.
Yeah.
So you have so little understanding. It's like it's the blind leading the blind. She's
My father
she's describing a
converted
world.
to Android, and I mean, it was like, you're in different languages now. Like, now he can't help, and he has trouble with his, and
Yeah.
they can't even discuss it, and they have to go to different stores to get their technical support, and their photos can't live together anymore. I mean, it's like,
Oh my God, yeah.
yeah, they're having a cross-platform relationship. It's like very, very awkward.
God,
And
yeah.
I don't know how much we're thinking about that kind of stuff when we're making these decisions of like how to differentiate our operating system from other operating
Not
systems,
enough,
and
obviously,
how to
yeah.
keep our content in our walled garden of where it will be the most useful for us.
Or not
Well,
caring enough about it.
Abby and I are both pretty obsessed with this idea of place and placemaking and sense making, and this is a big piece of it, right? Is that you can make an environment be really fungible and different across so many different instantiations, to the point where, yeah, there's not a sense of coherent place, and so yeah, you're trying to have a conversation with someone about this place that they're in, trying to figure it out and make sense of it, and the labels are different, the structures are different,
Yeah, it's no different than if I was to call someone who lives in a town that I don't live in and be like, yo, I'm lost in your town. I'm standing on the corner of this and this.
Yeah.
Like, how do I get back to my hotel? Like, it's not that dissimilar from my mom calling me and saying, I'm trying to get these photos off of my phone, and it keeps giving me this error, and I'm turning the wrong way, obviously. So which way do I go to get back to an album that makes sense on my phone? You know, so it's... I believe, that
or
stuff
even
is
the
really
sense of place
starting
of
to...
where is this, right?
Yeah.
Where if I take this photo off of here, is it still going to be in the main place where it lives? But what is that anymore? You know,
Right.
And a lot of the messaging and stuff isn't very clear around that. So all these ecosystems are super confusing, even to those of us who have been doing it for 20 years for a living.
And also they're evolving and they're changing at a pace which our own mental models just can't keep up with.
Oh, yeah.
So especially with parents and things, you see that they've got mental models that were basically built decades ago. And they've tried their best maybe to overlay some of the digital world that we're working in with our help often.
Sure.
And then they just think they've got it.
Yeah.
And bam, iOS 7 or Android Gingerbread or something, something happens and it's not the same anymore, and they don't really properly ever update their mental model
Like,
to fit
watch
the
little kids use phones. It's freaky. Because you're going to feel like that very soon. You're going to feel like, oh, I finally got a hold on everything, and then they changed it again. Like, little kids don't understand the phone icon. They don't understand the film strip icon because it looks like a bunk bed. Like, they don't understand a lot of
floppy disk icon.
Yeah, a lot. The floppy disk for save. Like, that's so antiquated, yet we still use it because it makes us comfortable. But, like, when they're in the designer seat, things are going to have to change, and then we're going to be in the position that our parents are in now, where it's just like, what is this? I paid money for this. It should make sense to me. Why doesn't it?
The impact of digital change is really underestimated. My daughter, when I upgraded, she has an Android tablet, and I upgraded that to, what is it now, Lollipop. I think it's the latest version of Android. And they changed the notification system between the last two versions of Android. And I upgraded it, and she goes, Daddy, I don't like this. I don't like my tablet now. I can't find any of the things that she knew exactly where all the icons were and where it was, and they'd moved completely, and some of them had shifted down a level, and she just couldn't work it out anymore. She was
They
clicking around.
screwed with her taxonomy.
Yeah, and she didn't
that
like
happened
that.
to me recently when I updated the software on my Apple device, and it automatically restructured some of my folder structures to remove apps and change labels of things. I was really annoyed. I put those things in those boxes because that's where I wanted them, and I gave them labels because I wanted them to be there. I put the things where I wanted, and then Apple was just like, blip, just wipe it away.
You invested time in it too.
Yeah, I did it wrong. I wasn't doing it their way.
People want to say, they keep saying, oh, well, children are natural with tablets, right? No, they're not. We just don't notice how much they're playing in order to figure it out, right? Like, we don't have time for that. So it's frustrating to us. And they don't fear just trying things, right? So, but once they figure it out, if it changes on them, they're just as frustrated as we are, right? Because they learned a system. So, but that's still the same object that's supposed to be still doing the same things, and that's what's so confusing. So, in an evolutionary scale, okay, we did not evolve to learn how a certain kind of thing behaves in the world and then have to learn how that same thing suddenly is a different thing. So this is a cognitive problem, right? That but because we can move all that stuff around, we do. Well, let's try it like this. Let's try it like that. And it's not just, people poo-poo it and they're like, oh, users have to get used to change. Well, yeah, I get that. And it could be that what it's evolving to is much better. But there's not enough thought given to the fact that, this needs to make sense. Now, the funny thing, too, is that a lot of times, even if you change it in a way that is coherent and that is actually better and the structure actually makes sense, people can learn it pretty quick. But more often than not, you'll start with a simpler structure because the first earlier versions of what you're rolling out is simpler. And then as you start doing feature creep, which is inevitable, because you want to grow your user base, you want to keep... What else are you going to do other than bloat your software? You can't just keep updating the code to just to work on new OSs. God forbid you would ever do that, which I just wish more people would, frankly.
You can't possibly be happy that the spade actually digs ground.
Yeah,
you've got to upgrade your spade.
No, you've got to add a whirly gigs and and a tuba on the handle or something, because people need to be able to play a tuba while they're digging.
And LED so that it knows when you've hit the ground.
Yeah.
And
All
a digital display that gives you analytics
Okay,
on
so
your
this
dig
is-
yesterday.
this is starting to
that
sound
would be
too
really
much-
useful. My efficiency would go up.
This is
They can
sounding too
analyze.
much. Whoa! This is sounding too much like a design charrette that a client's trying to have, where they just come up with all this crap. So, point being, right, that there's a lack of clarity in those structures because they're trying to still be the old thing, but also cram in the new things, and they end up complicating everything. And so that the only coherent model you've got is the one you learned in the previous version. So not to go too far on all this, but there is a cognitive aspect to this that I think is important for us as designers to kind of understand, so that we know what we're throwing at people, when we do these things.
No, we train our users on the interfaces that we make. There's very few interfaces that are natural. I won't mention the one that by science standards fits in, but
The truth is not even
we
that
learn
one
all of it.
necessarily is,
Oh,
so.
look at that. So, I feel like once we've trained them, I think there is this inherent fear of, can we retrain them? Like, if we retrain them, do we have to admit we got it wrong the first time? Because like, if I'm giving you money as a service to give me software or ability on the internet, and you have things some way, and I've learned how to do it for all these years, maybe I've even based my business on it, like something like MailChimp or WordPress or Twitter, right? And then all of a sudden, something changes. Like, I understand that feeling of like, even though it's bad, maybe, like, changing it might be worse because of how much you've trained people into one way of believing. So it's something that I think I asked the question of Josh yesterday after his presentation, Josh Seiden, about what the role of lean and things like that is in an incremental project, because I'm dealing more and more with businesses that are not blank slates. It's like, let's think of something. Not even startups. Like, startups already have all these words that they've decided, all these structures. They have their beta app. They have the thing they sold. And it's sometimes getting people to kind of kill their darlings from the very beginning, and that's what made them their money. That's what got them their pride. That's what got them the house they own, like all those things. So to get them to give it up can be, I think, a really challenging thing for the work that we do.
Yeah.
It's really changing society because, everybody's expected to do everything online now. You do banking online, so everybody's getting online. So the number of users getting online is actually increasing every month if you look globally. So this is a huge problem, all that you're describing, and how fitting it is then that we have two professional information architects in the room. So where do we start, and how do we go about doing it the right way?
Well, you sit around and you complain about it like this. That's the first really important step.
First really important
is
step.
you
Create
Admitting
awareness
it.
about the
No,
problem.
but seriously,
After that, let me think.
I know you're joking, but I do believe that admitting it is the first step,
Yeah.
and I know that sounds very much attached to other things that you hear and just in life in general. But if you can't convince your organization that there is a problem, you're going to be banging your head up against a wall. So the first step really is getting them to see it the way that it is. I see way too many young designers and technologists and marketers getting themselves very frustrated, running around with pictures of the way they think the world ought to be and trying to convince people this is the way it should be. Come to my side of the fence. Come to my side of this whole thing. And all they would really need to do to sell that kind of an idea would be to listen to the people that are currently there and to get them to understand what the mess is that they're trying to solve. Because if you can't see it, like, you can't understand what the value of sorting it out is. And I don't think that we pay too much attention to pointing out the messes, because somebody that we work with probably made that.
Yeah.
Right? Or we did 5 years ago when things were different. I mean, Andrew and I were talking about the Information Architecture Institute website, and he was mentioning that at the time that it was designed and built, it was a time where broad and shallow navigation schemes with lots of hyperlinks revealed and the use of embedded links within text was incredibly trendy. That was the way the entire internet looked. I get emails from kids today wanting to join the Institute who are offended by our graphic design choices, thinking that this is something that, like, we've done recently. So it's like the role of change and the role of deprecation in technology and time. I mean, there's like all these things that are they're around the stuff that we do, but integral to the stuff that we do. And if we can't get that part done, we can make diagrams all day of structures that would work better, but it doesn't matter.
I think this ties in with Lisa Welshman.
Oh,
what
yeah,
she
that was
says.
such a great talk.
She says, if to fix your website properly, you've got to first fix your organization, because that is the organization that got you to that website.
Yep.
So if you want to redo it, start there.
Because
If
otherwise
not,
they'll do it
you're
again.
going to be in a cycle.
Yeah.
Which, what frustrates me about that is a lot of agencies in our branch, that's their bread and butter. They need organizations to fail digitally constantly, so they can come in and take over and go, we can help fix this for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the business goes round according to the cycle of 3-year failures of websites.
You talked a bit about this as well with the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and the rabbit holes that you mentioned that people fall into.
Oh, yeah. People are constantly saying things to me like, oh, but that's just a semantic argument. And I'm like, yeah. That's exactly what it is. And if we can't agree on that one thing, how can we agree on anything else? Yeah. I had a student in my workshop the first day here, and he said it more brilliantly than I've heard anybody say it. His name is Uli. I don't remember his last name, but if you're listening, Uli, I remember this. He said, if we can get them to agree on the word, we can get them to agree on so much else. And I really believe that that's true, and I think people run away from semantic arguments because they're hard, and because the reason they're hard is that somebody has to bow. Somebody has to say, oh, okay, when we're talking about this in the future, I'll use your word because that makes sense to me.
Or I'll use your meaning of
I'll
that
use
word.
your meaning of the word. Or
Yeah.
we'll agree in this conversation that those are the same thing, but we're going to call them differently for these two different contexts. It's not about consistency necessarily. It's about purposefulness. It's about deciding and not just letting it go by the wayside and kind of letting it lay where it is. Because where it is messy and nobody thinks that's working, but nobody wants to fix it either.
I actually had an argument in your workshop doing that first activity.
See, and
around
there were strangers, and you're having arguments.
Yeah,
with them
around the
about
first
language.
word. One person wanted to call it upload, and then I realized, well, it's not upload really. Isn't it post? And another person said, no, it's publish. And so the first word we were talking about, we were having these arguments. That was really an eye-opener for me, because we don't have these arguments enough.
No.
Because people just assume that you know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Now, and Andrew and I have the unique perspective of being able to go around and make people have arguments like that, which can kind of make you into an asshole. I mean, it's one of those things that if you don't do that with humility and without opinion on how it goes, you can get yourself into being really hopped up on arguing, I mean, because there is something about getting people to kind of go there.
Well, there's this. So sometimes I make a point a lot that language for us is like water is to fish, right? And that it's just this medium that we're in, and we don't think about it, and how deep it actually goes. And when we do have to think about it, like explicitly, it's challenging, right? It's actually pretty challenging to try to think through, like, what do these things mean? How are we using our terms? So this isn't just about persnickety defining or you know what I mean. It's not just about let's be consistent. It's not consistency for consistency's sake. It's because that actually is that's a problem on the other end of the spectrum, right? Richard Saul Wurman, whom we both pull from a lot, has this wonderful thing where he says, "Order does not mean it's not the same as understanding." That this isn't a matter of saying, nope, let's just all agree on these words and then we're going to be good, because really the words are just a little signifier that's connected to this whole root system, that is connected to business rules and cultural baggage and legacy beliefs and
database
politics and the way things are named in a database even, or the way marketing wants to talk about things versus the way that advertising wants to talk about things. And so this becomes an entree into some really difficult conversations that the organization has to kind of deal with, and that they didn't necessarily have to deal with before, because it used to be that their channels were siloed comfortably. They didn't have to make everything kind of make sense as this sort of like ongoing ecosystem, right? They could just sort of put these static things out into the world, these broadcasted things, and that's just not, it's not going to happen anymore. So the language becomes this map that everybody has to be able to get onto, and everybody understand what it is, and then they're just the signifiers that stand for these tacit, deep alignments that have to happen. So a lot of our jobs really become that. In terms of what information architecture can do, it has an awful lot to do with just it's our version, I think, of the way Lisa was talking about it, right? Which is getting the organization aligned on what it is that they're doing and what they mean by stuff.
Yeah. When it comes to language and structure, what are you guys going to do here? Because I mean, right now I'm dealing with a organization that has acquired other organizations. So it's like each one of those organizations has their own language entirely, like from what they call their employees to the words on their interfaces to the way that they interact with customers on like a billing perspective and back-end systems. I mean, everything, the way that their analytics are tracked, all of it. And then on top of it, the companies happen to be in different countries. So it's like the cultural baggage of not just the organization, but then also the cultural baggage of the culture and the language differences, the time zone differences, the differences of work styles just between the UK and America or any of the other countries in America. I mean, there's stuff there. And kind of getting people comfortable with the idea that, like, yes, this is almost seemingly impossible. Like, how would you take 4 organizations and just go smoosh and make one and get everybody on the same page? And there's, I think, a couple pieces to it. One is letting them know that there's not going to be a Monday where we flip a switch and it all changes, because that would be destructive, that would be irresponsible, and that would be a fool's errand. Like, we'd be setting ourselves up for far too much risk and eventual failure by doing it that way. But what's scarier is instead we have to take steps towards it every day for like 5 years to get it done, which means it's not a project, right? Like Brad was talking about, it's a program. It's not a thing that you're doing once. It's a thing that you're feeding constantly. I thought that his thoughts on kind of the atomic level design and molecules and components was just spot on with the kind of stuff we're talking about. Like what he's doing for user interface elements, we're trying to do with language. We're making Lego bricks out of language, and we're saying, how are you going to snap these together? And you've got too many of those. Those all mean the same thing. What are you doing? And it ends up, to Andrew's point, in everything. Customer service scripts. That's my favorite one. Those are the hardest to edit. Help files. You change your verbs. Think about the impact of that if upload became post. It's not a find and replace. English doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Well, even bigger is, and I know not to stay on this too long, although this is kind of everything. A client I worked with for a long time last year, they sold credit card processing stuff and maintained it and had that relationship with merchants, and they called them merchants. But when we got down to it, they really didn't know what a merchant was. I mean, that sounds ridiculous because, of course, they know. I mean, there's merchants and they sign contracts and they pay money. But in terms of how you define that, in terms of your database and in terms of the way you communicate with them and in terms of classifying them, right, and what information do you need from them? What are the core pieces of information in order to know that you've defined that in your systems? Because all their processes and everything depend on the stuff. Well, it turned out they were gathering stuff that they didn't even need to gather, but they were gathering it because of legacy reasons way back, and they just kept gathering it. And they had whole business processes using it in 2 or 3 different ways, assuming this department thought it meant this department thought it meant something else, right? Incredible waste. And then down the line, like a year later, something would happen, and then somebody would have to scramble to figure out what the problem was, and it was because all this wasn't aligned.
Dan Klein calls that because reasons.
Because reasons, yeah. and they're just, but they're so busy just trying to grow and make money and get more merchants, And so, I mean, this was a central, and it took forever, like saying, but you guys, you don't know what a merchant is. And they were like, well, yeah, we do. And then finally it dawned on everybody, oh, no, we don't. We don't know what it is. So they're going to have to stitch that together, right? So we did that. But
it's often a core thing like that, too.
Yeah.
Like it's not like some peripheral term that everybody's like, oh, yeah, no, like half the company understands that and the other half does. It's like, no, it's the one thing that's like their number one customer or the number one thing that they do, like the value that they bring is just this fuzzy ball of we don't really know, and everybody has their own idea. And that gets really scary, especially as you grow. When small teams are pretty good with fielding that ball, but big teams, it starts to feel like a game you don't want to play.
I think that's one of the things I've been thinking about this week is just the whole. I mean, we all know our speciality. We all know our thing, and that's one of the reasons we're here is because we've got a background. We're good at stuff we do. But we know also that, like you said, with language, structure, research, setting goals, design, build, all of these things, there's a hell of a lot that goes into them. and we're pushing this into all to sprints, and we're shoving stuff out. We've got minimum this, minimum that, because we can just do it without, we just do as little as we can just now. We know full well that half the time that means it never gets done. The kind of the full-on research, the real proper care and attention that maybe going to in a proper structure for something, it's not going to happen because you've gone into that sprint and you'll never meet the backlog again. How can we get out of? How can we make this work? Yeah, exactly. How can we make this work? How can we make everyone understand the true value of doing it right?
I think we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. We have to call it by name. We have to give it a name, and when it has a name, it has a place in our mind. And if it doesn't have a place in our mind, then it doesn't exist. So right now, businesses do not consider information architecture to be a thing they have already. They think about it as being something that they might buy if they had more money to go get fancy consultants like Andrew and I to give it to them. And that's not what it is.
Yeah,
it
like
turns
usability
out
testing as well. Same
it
kind of
turns
thing.
out they're sitting on an information architecture right there, and they've got one already. And guess what? It's not doing what they need it to do because no one thought about it. And it's almost like if instead of making a plan for this building, they just hired a bunch of bricklayers and they were like, just show up on Monday, bring a brick, and put it where you want. I mean, that's basically how we're constructing
that's what they
many
did,
of the
actually.
systems that we're doing, right? And, some buildings do look like they were constructed that way, and those are not the ones that we want to dwell in for much of our lives.
The language that most still organizations are trying to solve this in is with interfaces. So what they'll do is they'll be like, okay, well, make some wireframes or whatever, comps. Prototypes, sketch some stuff, and that's what we're going to use to figure this all out. And the problem is that that's actually a very poor proxy for figuring out something like, well, what is a merchant? So, for example, this company I was working with, they were launching a whole thing they were called Simplify. It's a simplified way for merchants to enroll. Well, what they did was they just took some of the fields out of the form and took fewer fields up and made it look nicer. Which really wasn't solving anything. It was just a facade. It was putting whitewash on a rotten window, because underneath you still had all the same problems. All they were going to do then is just add more problems by making it so that when they did gather that information, it wasn't actually what they needed. It was just fields that were named things. But they made an interface and they made it simpler. Well, no, not really, right? So everything underneath it still had to be figured out. And so this is a big part of what we do is just trying to get at this idea that you can't you try to stitch together some kind of interface, a software interface, on top of business rules and definitions and processes that don't actually make any sense, and you can't fix it with an interface, right? If you try to oversimplify it, then you're just going to be obscuring important complexity that is just going to screw you up. It's just going to come back to haunt you. So you either have to fix that complexity, or you have to and make it simpler, or you have to figure out a better way to instantiate that complexity to people. But ideally, a lot of times that complexity is unnecessary, right? Like a lot of the complexity that's there is not. A lot of markets, a lot of businesses, they have intrinsic complexity, meaning that there's no way around it, right? There's going to be, there's some things about what you do that are just complex. Running an airline, for example. There's stuff about that, the logistics and all, those are going to be complex. You can't make that simple. But you sure as heck can simplify or decomplexify some of the other things that go on around that, right? The way you name stuff. So like when and this is an example from my book, but you show up at an airport and like, I've got a gold Delta card, but I'm a silver, medallion member. And there's Sky Priority, which is like a whole other label, but it actually contains some of the medallion things and some other stuff. And then it's like, I don't know what I am, right? I don't know. And then I've got the TSA pre or not. And then I've got a seat that's like a Comfort Plus seat or a preferred seat. And it used to be you get a Comfort Plus seat. It didn't really change how you can only get into Zone 1. Which would sound like it's the first zone. It's actually like the fifth, and then so just that, right? Just the framework of language that they have accreted, like these barnacles that have grown on that over time. has gotten to be such a labyrinth for people.
It's like the barrier to entry to that world.
Yeah. So you go to like
huge.
Delta customer forums and these longtime flyers, and they're having long ontological debates about what all this stuff really means and what the rules behind it are. And in some degree, it's like they're primitive peoples trying to figure out what the stars mean or what the entrails of a goat are saying. I mean, they're making guesses because really it's becoming almost algorithmic at this point. Like from one week to the next, you don't know what these labels actually mean. Just like on Facebook, you can go, well, most recent. Select most recent on Facebook, and what do you assume that means? It means all the things my friends post in reverse chronological order. Okay? No. It's algorithmically driven. You may not see a whole bunch of stuff that your friends are posting, even with that. There is actually no way to see everything your friends post unless you actually go to every friend's feed. And I think there's some other tricks you can use by making groups or something where they don't algorithmically change them. Anyway, so you see what I mean? Like this isn't just tidying up. This is a huge layer of our reality that because of digital technology, it can really get crazy in ways that the physical world just can't, just because of the nature of atoms, right?
Just that with Facebook as well. I mean, I've got a couple of friends that years ago, they got a bit ranty about certain topics. So I clicked on that option that gave you the chance to just show only most important. There was like different levels you could set people to and the frequency would alter. Facebook removed that, right? But I've got people that are trapped with that setting. and I've looked, I've actually searched a little bit because some of them I think, well, I want to pull you back out of that kind of rabbit hole now and I want you back in my feed. I don't see you ever. And I did some little research, and apparently the only way for me to get them back out of that hole, I've got to go in and like loads of stuff on that wall. And I'm not going to
teach the algorithm.
Yeah, and I'm not going to do that because that's going to turn me into some weird stalker friend who's just kind of suddenly liked 400 things on their
No, and like I want to believe that there are not meeting rooms of people making decisions that lead to these kinds of things, right? So
you mean consciously?
Consciously.
Yeah.
Like having meetings with decks and pointing at things and going, you know what we should do is we should lock all these people in purgatory between these two statuses when we do this, right? Like that we can probably agree that meeting probably didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
Because if that meeting didn't happen, if that conversation wasn't had, your friends end up in purgatory. Yeah. So I think that's actually the interesting part, is that the world is spending a tremendous amount of energy right now criticizing kind of the way that the world is turning out as a result of some of these things. But I don't know how much we, as the people who are making these things, are having the conversations with our colleagues about the deep, boring stuff of like, well, what would happen if this happened?
Well, let me say this too.
It's becoming one of those edge case is important type of things.
Well, in the interaction that you used to make that happen was very clear, right? I mean, it was like, oh, I know, okay. Although the way it was labeled for a while was completely unclear. By the way, it was like I forget what it was. It was almost as if you were unfriending them.
Yeah, it was.
But you weren't really unfriending them, and then they changed the label so that it's a little more clear that I'm just not going to see.
I'm really
them.
glad you're doing like a deep ontological study of Facebook over time. That's really good.
I'm impressed. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating
because they make so many wonderful mistakes, right? Yeah. That in terms of wonderful, in terms of learning, it's like a laboratory with like lots of viruses growing in petri dishes.
With the most statistically significant
you just have to wear a
world.
clean suit when you go in there because otherwise that will kill you. But then you have to look at what are the forces at work, right? So there's their whole advertising model. They have a business model that's driving the way they do a lot of these things. So that's a pressure in their environment in terms of the sort of choices they're making. So we're getting a lot of like people want to be able to unfollow people. Okay, well. So then the other thing is, how do they make software? Well, the way they're making software is somebody's going, well, we're getting a lot of pressure from our users. They want to be able to just hide some stuff, hide certain people. Okay, well, let's give them that ability. And let's plug it into the thing for efficiency's sake. That's the algorithm that is showing them less of those people if they're not interacting with them. So that you're fusing those two rules together architecturally. So this is all architecture, right? This is architecture for the behavior of an environment. The rules that mean is this door open or not? Is this window open or not? And so they're making those decisions. But there's no the way that they're making software doesn't have a countervailing force that says, okay, well, if you give them that ability, then what about when they want to undo it?
Right.
Well, that's not there. So there's just this is, again, it comes back to there's things in the organization. Like, you can't just come in and drop in and go, no, fix all this, make all this better.
Right.
No, there's an ecological, literally, like, ecological thing, because there's a whole environment that's pressuring them to do certain things. So you can make things better for a minute, and it's just going to go right back where it was. And so I've worked with so many clients who they're like, yeah, we need some new thinking, we need some fresh thinking, we need some blah, blah, blah. You guys are going to help us. I'm like, we're going to help you, but it's probably just going to go, you're going to end up doing the same problem, having the same problem.
It's like putting a skyscraper on a swamp. You just can't. You can't do it.
Yeah.
You don't have a solid footing. We need to get you a solid footing before we can put a big-ass building here.
And sometimes that means pointing out things like, gee, the way you're actually pushing software out into the world has some problems because it's distorting your intent, right? Or the way that the way that your business model is pressuring what you're doing is distorting your what you say your intent is.
Yeah. In essence, so we have this common enemy, and the common enemy is that we have hidden assumptions that everybody knows what stuff means. And the hidden assumptions are invisible per definition. So until we actually put them on the table and put words on them, we can't argue about them and become aware that, oh my God, we aren't talking about the same thing. So that's what we need to be start doing, is actually start labeling stuff, make sure that we are on the same page, and that will take us to the next step.
So it just so happens that I have a book called Understanding Context, where I talk about some of these things, and it's and there's a lot of pages in it. So it goes on even longer than I just did.
Value for money. Yeah.
There's a lot of value for your book buying dollar. And Abby has a lovely book.
I do. My book is called How to Make Sense of Any Mess, and it is available on Amazon and Kindle as well.
Yeah. All right.
Excellent. Thank you very much
Thanks
for
so
joining
much
us for
for
a chat.
sitting
Thank
with
you
us.
both.
Yeah,
this was fun.
Thanks.
Are you ready? Are you ready to be wrong, Per?
I'm always ready to be wrong.
Yeah.
Failing is my middle name. Oh, that came out wrong.
Hi, my name is Per.
Are any clients listening? No.
No, I think there's many excellent points that we discussed and raised in that show. But I do one of them I want to point out or highlight again now in the outro is just be ready to be wrong, or as Abby said, admitting you've done something wrong is a first step. You're not going to be able to get your organisation to understand that there's a problem. But if you haven't got them to understand there's a problem, you've got no chance whatsoever of fixing it.
You need to be fair and point out the mess. And like she said, I mean, maybe even you or someone you like is responsible for that mess because it was something you did maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But take
That's
responsibility.
Okay. Yeah, that's
fine.
okay. We move on. We learn stuff.
And that's actually what I mean with failing responsibly and failing over and over again, because that's what you do. Nothing is ever perfect. Nothing ever goes according to plan. But make sure that you actually talk about what the outcome is, how you can do it better next time, and how you can evolve it over time.
Conscious decisions are better than unconscious decisions.
Yes.
And as you say, remember to keep moving.
Yes.
That's really confused people now because they probably think the show's ended. But if you remember to keep moving, it's the same thing. You admit you're wrong, understand something, learn something from what you did. As if you can't see it, you can't understand the value of sorting it.
And I mean, design isn't a way to find the perfect solution. That's usually what people think, that you go to a designer, you find a solution, and that's the perfect solution for your kind of problem. But there is no such thing. One of my favorite quotes is about strategy, but I think it fits here as well, is that strategy isn't a way to find the perfect way to success, but strategy is finding as many ways as possible to something that is not failure.
The common language as well. That we that was nice how the two information architects both managed to weave in words and the importance of words and the understanding of them and the definition of them and agreement upon them. It's team building. I mean, a lot of stuff we actually discussed in some ways is team building or consensus building.
Yeah. And even in the UX community, we don't all have the same definition of what UX is. And that's what we're doing on the show. We're talking about it as much as possible because we're trying always to find a better definition of what we're doing. One thing that I loved about what Andrew said, design Tourette's, I think he said. We were trying to find stuff to add on when you had feature creep.
Feature creep, which is inevitable, is what he said.
Yeah, exactly, because you're always trying to find new stuff to do. Yeah. You're never satisfied, and so you're trying to find all these different solutions to a problem that never existed.
This episode was recorded in the spring of 2015 and originally released as episode 103 of UX Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Remember to keep moving.
See you on the other side.
James, do you know how a penguin built its house?
No, Per, I don't know how a penguin built its house.
He glues it together.